Don't disrespect my sausage. I'm serious. I'm being really serious right now.
I am too, which means both sacred and menstrual blood. Whoa. Well, that's not exactly the same as blood coming out of your vagina.
Hello and welcome to the Anatomy of Marriage podcast. I'm your host, your mom.
Good joke, girl. High five. Hello and welcome to the Anatomy of Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
My name is Seth. Hello. How are you guys?
Before we get started, we want to read the review of the day.
Yes, we do. While you're finding it, before we get started, also, we want to encourage you guys to go to marriagesupply.com. It is an awesome website, which we are partnering with, and we cannot be more excited. Go to marriagesupply.com and enter promo code 10 from AOM for a 10% discount on your total order until August 31st. So you have the entire summer, and just like we're calling this summer the summer of summers, we can also call it the summer of love thanks to marriagesupply.com. Go there.
Marriagesupply.com. Okay. Keeping it real.
Keeping it real. 5 stars, mind you. Okay, thank you very much. This show has been such a blessing and has taught me so much about so many different things that people just don't like me to talk about.
No.
Try it again. This show has been such a blessing and has taught me so much about so many different things that people just don't like to talk about. And you can't find it in books. No, you can't. It's hard. I'm glad that the Lord led them out of the place that they once were, only to help and encourage other couples to do the same.
Heck yeah, heck yeah, heck yeah.
Yep. We're awesome.
Thank you for this
Thank
review.
you for that. It was a 5-star review. If you have not and you do like the show, go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and rate and review. And also, if you do like the show and it's helpful, please consider supporting the show financially or just by word of mouth. If you want to do it financially, you can go to patreon.com/anatomy of marriage and donate $1 up to whatever you want. If you hit the $12 support thing, you get an awesome sticker for your car or your computer or wherever, or some glass surface that you want to put it on. And if you do the $15, you get a sticker and also a
Access
video that only Patreons see at the $15 level. We do things like Studley Cribs, and we'll be doing other things, just us, our life, for you to get to know us better. And yeah, go to those things. Let's roll into the show. Today, we're going to talk about periods, and sex, and hormones.
Lots of lady biz.
Lots of lady biz, right.
We got a question from a listener, a lovely gal who wrote in and was like, said all these wonderful, lovely things. And then at the very end, she was like, hey, I would be interested on your thoughts about periods and sex and hormones and all that kind of thing. And I think this is really important stuff that we need to be talking about in our relationships.
Right.
If you're a single man listening to this podcast, you need to know all this stuff too. So don't turn it off just because it's like something you're unfamiliar with or whatever, because this is all super duper important. And we're going to talk about it in a way that if you're a woman and you feel uncomfortable saying these things to your spouse, your husband, then we'll
say it for you.
Yeah,
get them to listen, and
they
we
can
will say it
listen,
for
and
you.
we'll say it for you.
That's right.
One of the reasons I think it's really important to talk about this stuff is that it's a really big deal for women. I don't know that men have the same kind of thing to deal with in the same way. So much like the squirting gel in your butt comment that I talked about with the semen issue.
We can have embarrassing boners.
Well, that's not exactly the same as blood coming out of your vagina.
Yeah.
It's slightly different.
I know it's not the same. It's just kind of a joke. It is embarrassing though.
But so it's just important that we have sensitivity around that and what other people are experiencing.
And normalize it, because every single woman ever in the history of the world goes through this. So why is it such a taboo topic or not talked about as much? And it's just not fair. And
did you know the term taboo stems from like a word that means period? I'll look it up, but it's like
really?
tabua or something like that. And it's like a word and it literally means,
really?
Hold on.
Okay. Here's one thing while she is looking that up. And I want us to reframe what we think about periods and normalize them. And oftentimes in a lot of cultures, maybe you guys know this or not, Melanie's dad's side of the family is Native American, and my mom's side of the family is Native American. And when a woman is on her period, a lot of tribes call it on their moon, right? Because it's a cycle. It goes along with the lunar cycle. Not every woman's period, of course, but it happens once a month, right? Or every 28 to 31 days. And that is considered a special time. Oh, she's on her moon, right? Maybe she's not allowed to do certain things because her energy, and this is kind of getting out there, but who cares? We're just normalizing it and respecting it for what it actually is. Her energy is too much and is just not appropriate because it brings imbalance to things, because oftentimes because it's too powerful, and that like taps into a woman's spirit and a woman's energy. So that's just a side note. You can look more stuff up, but it's something to be respected.
Listen to this. This is very interesting. It's not exactly what I was thinking. So it said linguists rarely agree on the origins of a word. What makes the origin of taboo interesting is the fact that multiple sources trace it back to the Polynesian word tapua or tupua, which means both sacred and menstrual blood.
Right.
Yeah.
So see, just what I was talking about. It is a time that is to be honored and respected, something as sacred. Obviously, I've never had a period. I don't know what it feels like. It changes hormonally what you're feeling and thinking. And if we can normalize that and honor that and respect it, I mean, just think of go back to like Jewish cultures or some other Abrahamic religions and stuff. That was a time, and it was something to be respected is what I'm saying. It is a time set apart to be respected and honored and not be taboo or weird.
So in having this conversation, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about specifically. So let me ask you, as a man, what have you thought throughout your sort of lifespan about menstruation and all that kind of stuff? Like, tell me what you thought about it when you were younger. And
I actually know exactly where I was when I learned about periods. It was with me and my younger brother, and we were in the mall parking lot in Greenville, South Carolina, and with my dad, and he told us about it.
How old were you?
I don't know. I think I was probably our kid's age. Maybe I was 10. My younger brother was 9 or 8. And he said, yeah, not sometimes, women go through these things. It's every month and they bleed, and it's called a period. And we were like, what? Okay. And of course we were 10 and 8, so we didn't know much about it, but he told us in a very respectful way. That's funny. I'm just remembering that in a very respectful way. And we knew about it, right? So compare that respectful learning with a bunch of locker room talk, it's there's all kinds of nicknames for on the rag, or, all kinds of other disrespectful things. And that's a lot of how I learned about it. In sex ed, maybe we learned some stuff and it was just not really helpful. It wasn't really respected. Like if a girl was on her period or whatever, if middle school, if something happened, or if you saw a tampon or whatever, you'd be like, ugh, gross, it'd just be kind of yuck, and the girl would get made fun of, right? Just it's middle school logic, so it doesn't really make sense. But the pervasive idea of it was not, this is respectful, this is especially when a girl first started menstruating along with puberty and stuff, it wasn't a transition to some other cultures do. It was just gross, it wasn't respected, revered, or anything. If anything, it was to be made fun of.
So how did you view it after we got married, or after you dated people who had periods?
I've never thought that it was gross or anything. It's just I think that I've been more comfortable with it than maybe you have, even in being open or knowing about it. I guess I Another thing was going back to some maybe untruths or not respectful truths. Oh, she's crazy. She's on her period. Oh, she's just pissed because she's, some other derogatory name for being on your period. Or like, oh my gosh, she's on a tear again for the next 4 days. Don't mess with her or whatever kind of thing,
Yeah.
Which, of course talks about the imbalance in hormones and stuff like that. But in our marriage, I have never thought of it as gross or an inconvenience or shameful or anything.
Yeah.
Like literally, I don't think anything of it.
Yeah. I think that it's important I want men to hear another man say that. Like, I just think that it's ridiculous that people would like be ugly about periods or be rude about them or any of that thing. Cause there's a lot of truth to like the hormonal change that happens when you're about to start your period, and like PMSing, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's real. It's not a pretend thing, but it's also if someone feels bad and you walk up to them, like if a kid is mad because he just dropped his apple on the ground and you walk up and say, "Oh, dropped your apple, huh? Too bad." That's what it feels like when people are like,
right.
"Oh, she's just PMSing."
Right.
Like there is nothing more offensive about that possible.
Because it's discounting the biological change that you're going through, the emotional change that the biological change creates, which different hormones and everything. And then on top of that, our culture's view of it being a dirty, gross, and also shameful kind of thing. So,
but I want to make that really clear to like, if you're a man and you're like being disrespectful or you're being flippant about like when your wife is on her period or her needing to have tampons or any kind of menstrual whatever, and you're being gross about it or ugly or snarky, that's so painful. It's so hurtful because we can't do anything about it. And we're not supposed to do anything about it. It is like a thing that our body does to create new life. It's very frustrating to me that people could have disrespectful attitudes about it. And as a woman, I just want to stand up and be like, all right, enough is enough, men. You don't need to do this anymore. You don't need to be grossed out by this. Grow up, right? Like just grow up. And so part of the reason I want to talk about it is that women have different experiences with their periods. Some women have really terrible cramps, and cramps are like, imagine a time when you've eaten a piece of food that's wrong and you have cramps and you're going to have diarrhea.
Wrong. Oh yeah.
Right? What does it feel like?
Terrible.
More.
What
do your guts feel like they're doing?
They're hurting. There's like pressure.
Tell me more.
I don't know. You can't really think about other stuff. You're like, oh gosh, I don't want to explode or whatever.
Rocket launch off of the seat.
Right.
But so it's that some women have debilitating cramps. There's actual names for it. I can't think of the term, but there's actually like a
dysmenorrhea, I think, is painful menstruation.
It might be, but there's like clinical diagnosis, like you can have a medical diagnosis of like cramps that are so painful that you can actually not go to work for it. And people have lost their jobs because of that, because they have, it happens sometimes every 20 days that people have their periods. Periods are not consistent always. Some people have periods every like 32 days or 28 days, or some of them have periods every 15 days.
Wow.
Sometimes a period will last for 3 weeks. Sometimes,
3 weeks?
Yes. Periods are insane. They just do whatever they want.
Right.
And sometimes people can be unhealthy, so unhealthy that they lose their period, right? There's all these different things. Periods are they're not super consistent.
Oftentimes runners lose their period.
Yeah. Periods aren't always the same. You can lose your period from stress. So there's all these different factors that go into how they work with our bodies. But then there's also other people who have almost no cramps at all, and their periods are like 3 days long, or some people have 7-day long periods or 10-day long periods. And so I want everyone to understand that periods are not one thing.
Right.
They're all over the board, and women have all sorts of different experiences with them, and they're also not like the blood flow that you have is not consistent. It's not like I cut your arm and it bleeds exactly the same for the next 7 days. It's like it might bleed a lot one day, not bleed at all one day, bleed again 2 days later. So that they're different. Periods are all different. The way that they work is different in and of themselves. So why I think it's important to be talking about it is so men get an idea of what it's like and how it works after you have a baby. It's like having a period. If you do a vaginal birth, you have like all this stuff that comes out of you. And it's like having a period forever. And it's like mondo and insane. And it's so uncomfortable. And And your uterus contracts when you nurse a baby. So when you nurse a baby, it's like that feeling of the most horrible diarrhea that you might have. And it hurts so bad.
A blowout.
Not always every single time, but that's a thing to know too. So
I think also normalizing this and saying, hey, okay, dudes, come on, let's get with the picture. Also normalizing it for some women because
absolutely.
Culturally they may have grown up from their family of origin that periods are shameful, or if they have other maybe religious beliefs about it that are weird, kind of like curse or whatever, or who knows what.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because that was one of the things too, is that this person asked specifically, how much do I tell my husband about my period? And so in that conversation, there's a few things that I want to talk about. So one, if you don't track your period on a period tracking app, I would highly recommend that you start. I only started doing it because my neighbor was telling me about her daughter who was just starting her period. And she's like, yeah, I had her start tracking it on a period app because she kept getting angry before her period would start, but she didn't know that it was because of her period was coming. And so she'd be like super mean to her brother. And it was like just causing a lot of conflict in the family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even thought that I should track my period on an app for the sheer fact that I can track my mood. I can track how I feel, because for years, I am 34 and I didn't start doing this until a few months ago. And for like 33 years, I had not been tracking it. And I would get like the most amount of depression 3 days before my period. I would be like, I hate everything. Everyone hates me. There's no point in doing anything. I don't want to be a mom. I don't want to be a wife. And it was like a legitimate, like sobbing kind of sadness that would wash over me that I couldn't understand. And I'd be like, why do I feel like this? Because everything is good in my life and I've got a nice house and a nice husband and a van.
So then from that came some negative self-talk. Oh, what's wrong with me? I should just get over it, blah, blah, blah.
And then a lot of arguing between you and I.
Yes.
We would have a fight every single time that I was about to have my period, but because I wasn't tracking it, I had no idea.
You didn't know, and I didn't know as well, right?
Yes. So there was no because it's a chemical thing that you can't stop it. If you're just like sensing and feeling, not like knowing in your mind, you can't stop the way that you feel. Does that make sense? But if I know in my mind, oh, my period is coming in 3 days. Oh, maybe this like despair is not exactly accurate.
Or give me a heads up, like, yo.
Sorry for the interruption, but I want to tell you about the She Is Called podcast. It's a national conversation for women who lead, where they believe that calling is the internal howl of passion by which we understand ourselves and our work in the world. This is an amazing podcast that after hearing like 2 episodes, I decided to volunteer my time for audio work for them because I love it so much. And this podcast is not just for women. So if you're a dude and this sounds cool to you, please, please, please listen. Don't forget to share it once you fall in love with it, because you will fall in love with it. And if you follow us on social media, you know that I went to their conference back in April in Denver and it was amazing. They are amazing. Visit their website at sheiscalled.com to learn more about what Carla and Kate do and how they work in the world and why they're called to do this. You can listen to the podcast on iTunes and online. And please just check it out. They are such amazing people who are spreading love across this planet, and they are unstoppable, and I can't wait for the future that She Is Called has. So check it out. She Is Called podcast and sheiscalled.com. All right, back to the show. Period is coming in 3 days. Oh, maybe this like despair is not exactly accurate.
Or give me a heads up, like, yo, period's on its way. Just reminding you, because and honestly, I sorry if this hurts your feelings. I really couldn't tell you when yours is. Is it like the 27th or something like that?
It changes, but
okay.
But you're right. It's around the end of the month. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Usually, I think. But that's not something that I am. It's not in my calendar.
Well,
right?
no, it's fine.
I mean, it could be.
Feelings.
That'd be kind of intentional.
Yeah, but
and I think. Well, speaking about intentional, you didn't know this forever, right? But you took the initiative. Luckily, your neighbor, our neighbor, told you, and like, oh, okay. This is a way to improve myself, to increase awareness around it. And if I'm aware of it, I can tell other people, i.e. me, and we will probably have less arguments. If I know that something is around the corner, then I'm going to be prepared for it rather than just walking up on it, right?
Yeah.
So I really like the level of intentionality and the self-awareness of actually doing something about it. So that's great.
It's very, very cool. So I would highly recommend getting a period tracker app. I use a free one called Eve, EVE, and it's great. It's like it has a calendar on there. It asks you if you started yet, did you stop? And it's so accurate. It's unbelievable.
Right.
And that's if you're healthy. Like lots of health stuff makes your period weird, but it's awesome. Super, super awesome. The second part of that is, yes, communicate once you're comfortable and once your spouse is comfortable. I would communicate as much as you feel like you need to communicate with your partner about your period. So, and another thing in that too, I'll get back to that in a minute, but some people really like the idea of having sex on your period is just horrific. Other people think it's great. So don't judge them. You don't need to, there's no reason. But I'll say for myself, my period has changed over the last year. It's just different than it was a year before, which is no big deal. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But so there's a window in my period where it's almost not even there. I'll bleed for these days, not bleed, and then bleed again. So on that time frame when I'm not bleeding, we could totally have sex and it wouldn't make me feel uncomfortable. I don't think you even care if I'm bleeding or not, but
no,
some people really like it because blood is a type of lubricant.
Right. So yeah, that sounds really not, I was going to say it sounds really gross, but just as like, not period blood being gross, but just like
a lubricant.
Like, oh, grab the blood. You know what I'm saying? That's gross.
Grab the
I
ox
guess.
blood.
It's like the ox.
I just thought it'd be funny to say like a witchy thing.
That's even, Harry Potter. Okay. Yeah. Some people may be uncomfortable with that. So I want to recognize that. However, I am not uncomfortable at all. I think you are more uncomfortable with it. I have sex every single day. It doesn't matter, period or not. However, if it doesn't bring connection and pleasure, then that's something, right? And if you say, yo, I'm on my period and whatever, it's not happening, then I'm okay. I want to respect that. I mean, if you're on your period or not, duh, I'm going to respect what brings you connection and pleasure. But yeah, it doesn't, it doesn't matter. To me, right? Yeah. Well, it doesn't gross me out. It doesn't freak me out. It does nothing. Yeah. In fact, here's an interesting thing. It would turn me on, not because you're on your period, but it would turn me on and be attractive because you would be so comfortable.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? You're comfortable in your body. You're comfortable in your skin, and that is attractive. Okay. Period or not, right?
That's interesting.
So if
maybe
you're
that's
like
something...
on your heaviest time and you're like, yo, I'm...
Connection and pleasure.
I'm serious. I'm being really serious right now.
I am too.
That really, being forthright, candid, comfortable, that really is attractive.
So I wanted to bring all of this up. So in case you are listening and your spouse is listening and you haven't had this conversation or you haven't like experienced this yet, or you're like been avoiding it. Maybe this is an invitation to talk about it. People have sex on their periods all the time. It's not a big deal. It is not a big deal. It's also a different experience. It feels different, right?
Really?
So
what?
Yes.
I don't have a vagina.
Do you have a wiener though? a wang, a dong.
Don't disrespect my sausage.
You. Whoa.
Oh.
What? Well, there it was.
We're on tonight, folks.
I guess. But in that, so that's an invitation for conversation. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling uncomfortable, whatever, there are other things to consider though too. This conversation, or the email sounded like what the person was saying was, I feel really terrible like on these certain days, and then these certain days I feel like this, or like sometimes your energy drops a ton. There's so many things to consider. One is that you're actually losing blood. You're actually losing iron. You can become anemic on your period. That happens to me because I'm skinny and I've always been like borderline anemic. So when I get to that time of my cycle, if I'm not eating things that have iron in it, I will get really like weirdly foggy brained and feel weird and shaky. And
More than usual.
So there's lots of things to consider that you could actually be helping. You can probably do a lot of things around that big, like the 10-day window or whatever, to help you feel different.
And if your partner knows about your cycle, then literally they could make you a foods rich in iron.
Yeah.
Like what if I knew around the time, how sexy would it be or how loving would it be if I was like, oh, I'm going to make some, I don't know.
Liver.
No, gross.
Well,
creamed spinach.
Yeah, I was going to say
with
spinach.
iron, or a spinach salad or something that has more iron than normal in it. And here, I want you to eat it.
Yeah,
and
I
don't
drink
expect anything from it. It's just,
I make smoothies that have spinach in them, and I drink them especially, like sometimes I don't always drink them, but I drink them especially when I'm on my period, because I'm so sensitive to iron and low iron levels. And that's a thing to consider. Like it might just be that on those days, and a period tracker app will help you know when those days are coming more accurately, and you can deal with it by what you eat or taking supplements, things like that. And that will help you feel better.
And what about the other, because obviously we talked a little bit about hormonal issues and how it affects your emotional state. What about libido? Do some women have increased sexual desire during their period?
I think that they do. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times women will have increased sexual desire before they start menstruating, because that's when they're ovulating. So it's like,
so biologically it's like, let's
like,
do this, which
horn dog status goes to 12.
Yeah, really not just like, it's almost like a,
it's just like a baby.
You know when you
making
like get the taste for a certain food, and it's like your body
cotton
wants,
candy.
Well, maybe not, but you kind of crave something.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we actually crave.
Yes, you crave what you need.
Sex, right? And if your wife comes to you with that, like this is straight to the male partners in the thing. If you shame your partner for that, then
get out of town.
No, I'm serious. Of course, if you have maybe some trauma around that, then I will respect that. But if you're like, oh, that's gross, how dare you, then you need to freaking straighten your stuff up, and because that is not cool, right? If you're like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, maybe a wife who has been weirded out or shy about her period stuff says all this stuff to her partner, and her partner's like, oh, that's gross, and it's like, oh, that's undesirable. Now, if you truly find that not connecting, not anything, then you can respectfully say, I love you, I respect you so much.
Maybe we could do something different.
Maybe let's do something different.
Yeah.
All this stuff, you can respectfully say it. But if you are any shaming whatsoever, then that's not cool.
Boo. Another part about this conversation, and there's a few things about this sort of, you said earlier, like, I'm less comfortable than you are around period stuff.
Yes.
That's because I'm the one experiencing it, right? When you're on your period, lots of weird things happen. You can get bloated. You can get really hungry. You can feel moody. You can want to eat certain foods, and people will make fun of you for it.
Right.
So that's very anxiety inducing sometimes. You don't want to actually behave the way you want to behave because someone's going to call you stupid for it, right? So there's a lot to consider as a person who's not having a period, right? The other thing too is the hygiene element of it. Like it's uncomfortable.
Right.
It's like I cannot even think of, it'd be like, and this is a serious analogy, it sounds really gross, but like, have you ever had a burn that's like weepy? Like you have wounds that are weepy and they just are gross for days and days.
You're self-conscious about it. You don't want to get it on your
You don't want to
clothes
touch it. Yeah.
whatever.
Like you don't want, so that's kind of like being on your period. Like it's a thing that keeps oozing blood and mucus and stuff, and it is uncomfortable, and it makes you awkward. You feel like, oh, is it smelly? Like, and I'm not being weird, like that's a real part of it. And so it's uncomfortable for a person going through that to be like, yeah, let's be intimate and close. I'm free in my body. Like that's uncomfortable. So to take that in consideration as well. But right along those lines, there's lots of different ways to handle being on your period than just tampons and like pads. And I want to talk about that because just recently, like maybe 4 months ago or 5, I got a Diva Cup, which is a reusable menstrual cup. And I love it. And I had not wanted to get, I had like heard about them forever and been like, that's disgusting, like gross, blah. And then I realized it's a social thing. It's just like, I don't know. It's not gross for any reason other than culturally you're taught to have napkins and tampon panty liner crap, right? But anyway, so a Diva Cup is a reusable like silicone kind of cup thing, and
like those little kids popper things, those things, right?
Yeah, like the things you turn inside out and
right go.
So yeah, it's kind of like that. But so the reason that I'm bringing it up is because I absolutely love it. It took me about 3 periods to make it work right. 3 times of having a period. And I would put it in and it wouldn't do right. And I would put it in, it wouldn't do right. And I would put it in, it wouldn't do right. And it took probably 3 months for me to figure it out. But once I figured it out, it's like a game changer. It is so different because you'll be on your period and you literally like forget about it. You forget that you're on your period because it can stay in for 12 hours, which is amazing because it's not absorbing anything. It's just holding it in this cup.
Right.
And so then you change it when you're at home. It's no big deal. You rinse the cup out and then you just put it right back in. Nothing. I mean, it's amazing. You don't feel gross. You don't feel stinky. You don't feel like you're wearing a diaper. Like it's awesome. So that's one. So it's called the Diva Cup and they sell them like at Target. I think Kroger has them. Fred Meyer has them.
Should we get sponsored by them?
I would love to get sponsored by Diva Cup. Are you kidding me? There's also, I think, another brand called like the Moon Cup. I haven't tried that one, but, and then there's a new one called, I think it's called the Flex Menstrual Disc. And I just saw an ad for it on my Facebook page actually. And this one says that you can have sex with that in. I don't know how that works because it's a different one than the Diva Cup. It goes in differently. It's not the same shape. It looks like a crocheting, like a, what is that called? A crochet, what is it? A loop, like those loops where you,
I don't know.
So anyway, it's like a ring and then it has like a loose, like a diaphragm thing in the center of it. Yeah. And that one, I don't know exactly how it works, but it says you can have sex while you have it in.
So this is an interesting thing. Just you talking about the different products for menstrual cycle and stuff. This is also almost a new awareness or a new opportunity for people, for females who maybe were raised in a different culturally raised in a culture which didn't advocate for knowing your body, like this could be a whole sexuality podcast, but knowing your body well enough to what's going on down there, because who knows how to use a cervical Diva Cup or other things.
Well, even
like that.
when I mean, it's funny because one of my best friends is a doctor, and I told her about it. She had never heard of it. She had never heard of it.
Interesting.
And when I told her about it, she was like, "What? It goes in what?" And I was like, "How? I mean, you're a doctor. Come on." But so it's weird because it really is like it's like in a cultured kind of like, all the commercials that you see with like a panty liner and they're putting the blue glop on it. Like what's blue about a period? There's nothing blue about a period, right? And so yeah, there's a cultural element there, a social element there.
Oh, here's an interesting thing. So at work in the bathrooms, because we have unisex bathrooms or whatever. And they have the little stainless steel compartment right next to the toilet, for used tampons and stuff. And there's an illustration, and I don't know who made it. I think somebody at work made it, but it has but cartoons of a tampon or a pad or anything like that with a smiley face with red dots all over it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like real period blood. It's like, these go here. And it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, just think about little girls seeing that and maybe asking their mommies or whoever, their aunties or whatever, hey, what's that? And then being able to have a conversation about it, and not a weird blue, this is blue, and it gets splashed on the thing.
Yeah, it looks like laundry
and then
detergent.
some ladies running on the beach is like, I can do anything.
Yeah, with a slip. Yeah. So, and then another thing too that made me think of, how do you know how old I was when I started my period?
Okay, I'm going to school you right now. Well, based on your BMI, your body mass index, females with a higher body mass index, fat, usually start menstruation at an earlier age. And in a lot of poverty-stricken communities where there's malnutrition, disease, females are starting their period later and later because they don't have the fat reserves to start their period. They're not childbirthing age. So based on your family of origin, where you were born, and your history that I know about you, I would say in between 9 and 7.5.
What?
9 to 9 3/4 years of age.
You think I was 9?
Yes. Almost 10.
I was 10. I was in 5th grade. I don't know if your information is totally correct that you just quoted.
It is, actually.
But I think you're cool.
No, I mean, it really is true.
So there is lots of evidence, though, that periods are starting younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a father or a mother with a 9 or 10 or 11-year-old daughter, this is a conversation that you should be having with your kids, even your sons. Our boys all know about periods, or both know about periods. Hattie knows about them. She's only 6. And we try to just make it normal because our sons are going to be around their sister, and she's going to be I'm on my period. They know about it, and it's not a big deal. So these are good things, good conversations to have early in a healthy way and in a good and respectful way.
Right. And just like we try to do with anything, we're normalizing this. We're normalizing conversations around sex or knowing who you are or fighting or family of origin stuff. It's all about the norm.
But I just wanted to answer that question and kind of open up the conversation for people and for couples, because periods aren't the same for everyone.
Right.
Some men don't think that they're terrible. Some men think that they're great. Some women think that they're great. So it's really not, there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to this kind of stuff. And there should not be any shame around it. You don't need to feel bad about having a period. That's kind of silly. So, and I would say, as the spouse of a woman who has her period, so as the husband, do everything that you can to make that easier for her, because it's not something she can control. Right. So
Seth spinach casserole.
Seth has gone to the store and bought tampons before. I don't use them anymore. I would suggest that everyone gets a Diva Cup, but you've done that for me. It's not a big deal. So be good and loving men to your wives and buy them their menstrual products without acting like it's gross or whatever.
Right. That can be an act of service and an act of love and respect, and bring possible connection along the way. Right. So thank you for this question. It was an awesome question. Really, obviously, kind of had a good conversation around it. Quickly, we're not going to bore you with stuff. However, if this is helpful, if it's good for you, go to patreon.com/anatomy of marriage and consider supporting. $12 you get a sticker, $15 you get a sticker, and special exclusive videos that we do. Also, rate and review the podcast, and tell your friends, tell your people about this. Anything else?
I might have to make some posters about periods.
Go for it.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Give us a rating on the podcast. Tell all your friends. Do whatever you can. And thank you so much.
All right, people.
Have an amazing day.
Good show. Later.